Okay, this is project 2. And that's the classical. So classical. And what you need to remember in this one is you move only the SRAS curve. And the only two reasons that you use, if you notice over here on the circular flow, when you move the SRAS curve, the cost of production is what has changed. But in classical economics, they don't believe in productivity changing to cause the movement, nor do they believe in supply shocks. They only believe in wages and non-labor costs. So that's the only two elements that you will on the how part that you will use. Now, when you answer the first scenario, and remember the first scenario is that you have unemployment in the economy. So what you have is you have your intersection of your curves is to the left of the GDP natural. So here's where GDP natural is, and your equilibrium is here to the left. Now, in the first situation, where you have basically unemployment, and unemployment is reflected with an intersection to the left of GDP natural. And you have deflation. Now, if you recall from our first project, we moved the AD curve to the right to solve this problem. But now in classical theory, they do not believe that the AD curve moves and gives you full employment. They believe that it's the SRAS curve that moves. Now, in order to get the full employment through movement of the SRAS curve, you would have to go like this, and notice that your price levels are going to go down. You will get yourself to GDP natural, but I said down and I made it go up. Your price level goes down when you move the SRAS curve to the right. So it's going to be counterproductive in solving this problem. So let's see how we would answer this first one. Now remember, the first one in the first project was moving the AD curve would get you to full employment and price level stability. Here in the classical, we're moving the SRAS curve only, so we're going to move it to the right. And in all four scenarios, you move the SRAS curve only. So this one, the answer of what we did, we moved SRAS right. How did we do it? Now, according to classical economics, the cost of production, in order to move the SRAS to the right, cost of production must decrease. And classical theory says that that decreases because wages decrease. And the second thing is non-labor costs decrease. And remember, they're saying it does it naturally. That's why in all four of these scenarios, 1, 2, 3, and 4, you will only talk about wages and non-labor costs decreasing. Because that's what classical theory is. Don't talk about productivity and do not talk about supply shocks. It's these two things will affect the cost of production, which is going to make the move of the SRAS curve. In this case, SRAS is to the right, cost of production must decrease. In order for that to occur, wages have to fall, non-labor costs must fall. Now, the result of this, the GDP equilibrium goes to GDP natural. Remember, this statement is always, you will always make it in this way for every one of the different scenarios in the different projects. Your GDP will always go to GDP natural. Here, unemployment will decrease to natural rate of unemployment. And then you can say the first goal what is it? Full employment is met. Now, the price level in this case are decreasing. This is going to add to existing deflation. So our second goal of price level stability is not met. Not met. That's what's going to happen in the first scenario when you use classical economics. You're not going to get your price level stability. That's because in the first project, in order to get price level stability, you had to move the AD curve. We're moving the SRAS. Where did you move the AD curve in the first project? You moved it in the second scenario. I'm going to leave you to solve it by moving the SRAS curve, but in that case, you will not meet price level stability. Now, in the third and fourth cases in the first project, you move the SRAS curve, so you're going to get both full employment and price level stability. But remember that when you do the third and fourth, or when you do all three of them, the only two things that you will address are wages and non-labor costs. Do not talk about, over here, don't talk about productivity and don't talk about supply shocks, because that is not a classical response to a problem. So this is the only one I'm going to do. You have to do all the rest of them, but 2 is the only one that you got to change where you're not going to meet your price level stability, and you're going to have to modify what you're talking about. And then 3 and 4, the only thing you do different there than you did in the first project is you do not address productivity or supply shocks. Do not talk about productivity and supply shocks in any of these four in classical economics. So that is the explanation for project 2.